Do you know how to read a job description? If you want to apply for a job, you need to know how to be able to actually read the job description, unpack the information that you need out of that job description to then be able to prepare your application documents like your resume and your cover letter. I'm Lucy and I'm a career counsellor from Study Work Grow. And in this session today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to learn how to unpack a job description so that you can then tailor your applications and get the most out of your application process. So to do that, we're going to be using a fictional job description, but this is pretty similar to any kind of job description that you're going to find on an online search engine for jobs. It's going to have some pretty standard information. But if you like, what you can actually do is you could follow along with a different job description, one that you actually want to apply for. So I'm going to be asking lots of different questions about information that we want to be finding, identifying in this job description. You can follow along and then try and find that information in your own job description as well. Write that down, and that's going to help you with the application process. So to start with, we're going to be talking about this job description, and this is for a really entry-level role. These job descriptions, they get more complex as you move through your career. So if we were talking, for example, about a senior level role, these might be a much more complex actual document with a lot more detailed information that you would have to address. But because this is an entry-level job description, it's actually pretty simple and they follow a really specific formula. So hopefully, provided the employer has written the job description correctly, you should be able to find the things that I'm going to talk about today in any different job description that you have in front of you. And you do really want to know what all of these things are. So suggest that we've found a job that we want to look at on an online search engine, and we've gone into the page. And the first question that I'm going to be asking myself when I'm on this page is, what is the job title? What is the specific job that I'm going to be doing? And in this case, it's really easy to find because it's right at the top. And you're going to find that's the case for most job descriptions. It's going to be relatively easy to find the actual job title. You've probably seen it when you were looking at the search engine before you've even gotten into the actual job description page. So in this case, it's for a team member. I can tell from that information that I'm not being employed. I wouldn't be employed as a supervisor or a manager. I'm just going to be a team member. And I can also see the section that I'll be working in. So I'll be working in the checkout section. That's different to like a bakery section, for example, or if I was out at the back in the warehouse, moving stock around. So I've gained a little bit of extra information about what the actual job would entail from the job title. So that's the first thing we want to find. The next thing we want to be talking about is, who are you actually going to be working for? So in this case, this fictional job description, we're going to be working for Fresh Horizon Supermarket. So I know it's going to be in a retail role. I'm on the checkouts, so I can tell both those things. And then I'm going to be selling some pretty standard supermarket type items. I can get a little bit of an idea from the picture as well. And selling groceries and things that people need for their homes. Now, sometimes you might find it difficult to work out who you're actually going to be applying for, because sometimes recruitment companies will advertise job descriptions and they will put their details in this section instead of the actual company that you would be applying for. If that's the case for you and you found a job that you like the look of, but you can't tell who it's even for, reach out to them, ask them for that information, because it is something that you should be able to find out before you go through the process of applying. And it's also something that's nice to know. It tells you exactly which one you're going to be working for example. The next question I'm going to be asking is, where is this job located? This is important for a couple of reasons. The first is that, and the most significant, is that you don't really want to be applying for entry-level roles that are actually located quite a way away from where you are. In this case, I can see that it's located here in Careerville. It's really easy for me to find. If the job description doesn't list this up the top, you might need to seek down. They might have assumed that you know where they're located because of the title of the organisation that you're going to be working for. Particularly if there's only one particular outlet or branch for that job, they might not have bothered to put in the location. You want to be checking that you know exactly where this business is located before you go through the application process. And if they've put in a generic, say a city-wide location instead of being quite specific about where they're located, you want to work out that before you apply, because the last thing you want to do is end up getting an offer for a job that's on the other side of town, and then you've got to commute. Because particularly when we're talking about these entry-level roles, you don't really want to be commuting for a long distance to be able to go on and do this work. Next question is, how many hours are they offering? What type of work are they actually offering? And this is another thing that we usually find right at the top of these job descriptions. In this case, it's here next to a little icon of a clock. And I can tell two things. I can tell that it's casual employment, which means I'm going to be under different conditions than if I was a permanent employee, maybe part-time. So that's told me a little bit of information. And I can also see that I'm going to be offered up to 12 hours per week, and it will include evening shifts and weekend shifts. You want to read this information really carefully and then make sure, A, that you feel that you're confident you can do that up to that many hours per week, but also that you can work in the conditions that they've specified. So in this case, in the evenings and on the weekends. If your weekends are already really busy, you have sporting commitments or some other community commitments, and you know that you're not going to be able to do shifts on the weekends, you don't really want to be applying for this job, because all that's going to happen is there's going to be friction, because they're specifically looking for someone who can do that kind of work. So if that's not you, that's fine, go find another job. You might also want to make a note of this, particularly if they say that something like up to 12 hours, or if they say starting at 12 hours per week, because that might be a question you want to ask in the interview. Do they mean that it's always going to be 12 hours per week? Or will it generally be 4 hours a week, but sometimes up to 12 hours a week? Or if it's starting at 12 hours a week, are they going to expect you to work longer once you've gotten used to the position? So those are things that I would want to know as well, because they might change how I feel about the position. So after we've looked at how often we're going to be working, the next question is, what are they actually looking for? What kind of person are they looking for? And does this match who you are? Because there's a chance that there's going to be jobs out there that don't actually match who you are. So let's have a look at that for a second. So they are saying a little bit in this top section about themselves, what kind of things they're wanting to offer. So they provide this community-based organisation. They have high quality produce, and they're expecting good quality customer service with a really welcoming, friendly shopping environment. They're saying that they can support you in your growth and development as well. So that's always good to know. But when we're looking to find out who they're actually looking for, you're going to be wanting to scroll down into this section that actually talks about the role. This is sort of a preamble section. I wanted to go a little bit further into the job description and look at what they've actually asked for in the role. So they're seeking a dedicated and enthusiastic team member. The role involves a variety of tasks aimed at maintaining highest standards of customer satisfaction and store presentation. So that's pretty standard stuff. They want you to be interested in food. They want you to be happy working in a fast-paced environment, and they want you to have strong communication skills. So once we've found that section, you need to be asking yourself, does this sound like me? Am I actually interested in food? Am I actually interested in groceries? If you have no interest whatsoever in food and in groceries, and you're not particularly keen on working with customers, and you don't like being rushed, then this might not actually be the job for you. There will be other jobs that don't have those kind of requirements, but this job in particular might not be the right job for you. So it's really important that before you really go much further, that you actually try to think about who you are and the kinds of strengths you have and the kinds of things you're interested in, and whether or not there's any alignment between yourself and the role. If you feel like you would have to be making things up or kind of embellishing the truth a little bit in your interview to get the job, chances are that's an indication that this isn't actually the right role for you. The next thing we're going to be looking at is, what are the different responsibilities? So what will you actually be doing in this role? And this is kind of taking that step further. Okay, cool. I've read about the role. It sounds a bit like me. Now I'm going to be looking at what sorts of tasks I'll actually be asked to do. So most job descriptions will list these, because they want you to think about not only does this sound like me and am I okay to do this, but also when you're writing your application, they're wanting you to demonstrate that you are capable of doing some of these things. So right here in the key responsibilities section, we've got you're going to be providing customer service, assisting with queries, processing sales transactions, restocking shelves, maintaining high standards, general cleaning duties, adhering to health and safety guidelines, and then assisting in inventory management and control. So these are all pretty standard things for a team member, but it's good to really know there that you're going to be required to do all of these things. And you want to have a little think about that. So would you actually be happy also restocking shelves when required? Or do you really just want to be working on a checkout? You don't want to be ever lifting anything heavy, lifting boxes, or kind of working with stock inventory systems. If this doesn't sound like you, once again, probably not the job for you. But this also gives you the opportunity to think about what you've done that might be similar in the past, and then use that in your application process. So if you're reading through these key responsibilities and you're like, Yep, I've helped out at my school canteen. I'm pretty sure that I can handle questions from people. I can process money because I've done that as part of my canteen duties. I feel like I'm confident handling money or handling sales processes. Perhaps you've worked in some sort of volunteered in some sort of capacity before where you've had to move things around or you've had to count or do some sort of stock take. Perhaps you've worked in somewhere where you need to keep things clean. Maybe you're really, really good at keeping your bedroom clean, for example. When you're reading through these key responsibilities, if there are things that are popping up to you that are saying, yeah, that actually sounds like me, I've done something similar to that before, that's great. And we're really wanting to pull those out when we write our resumes, write our cover letters, and fill in the application process. So when we've worked out what they're looking for, and we've worked that out in looking at both the role description and then the key responsibility section, the next thing is to look at what they're expecting in terms of skills and experience. Now, with most of these entry-level jobs, they will be really explicit and they will say, we do not expect you to have prior experience. If they say that and you don't have any experience, if they say, actually, we're looking for someone with 2 years customer service experience and you don't have any experience, that doesn't mean that you can't apply, but it does mean that you're going to have to be able to justify that you're capable of doing that and that you have other things that prove that you have customer service capabilities. And there's a chance that you might be passed over in favor of someone who has customer service experience. But this job description is for an entry-level position, and they literally say no previous experience required and that full training will be provided. So that's great to know as well. They are looking for some skills though. So they're not necessarily looking for experience at this phase, but they are looking for some skills. So the first one is they want excellent communication and interpersonal skills. This is pretty standard if you're going to be a team member and you're going to be customer facing. So a lot of entry-level roles in hospitality or retail are going to be customer facing, and they're going to want you to have the ability to maintain their brand when you're talking to customers, because the last thing that they want is to be worried because there's a junior in their store who is not speaking appropriately to their customers, who is maybe being abrupt or is not answering their questions appropriately or is making things up. So that's kind of their first point of call. Can we handle talking to customers? And the way they find that out is by they're saying, do you have excellent communication and interpersonal skills? When you're writing your resume, your cover letter, or your application, and when you're going through the interview process, you're going to need to be drawing on some things that you've done that actually demonstrate that you have great communication and interpersonal skills. And you might talk about how you've worked in groups at school, when you've done different group projects. You might talk about how you've done presentations in front of a class, or you might talk about how you've collaborated with others and communicated with others as part of different committees or as part of different teams, for example. Lots of different ways you can prove that, but that is something that they're going to want to see, and you're probably going to have to be able to demonstrate that. The next one they've listed here is they want you to be able to work effectively as part of a team and independently. So great, cool. I know that I also need to prove how to do those things. I need to prove that I've got strong organizational skills and attention to detail. And I also need to check and be okay with the fact that I'm going to be working various shifts, including even evenings and weekends. So treat this as a bit of a checklist. When we're looking at the skills and experience list, or the skills and qualifications list, in any job description, use it as a checklist. Do you have all of these things, or are you okay with all of these things? If not, potentially this isn't the right job for you. If so, great, let's move on and complete our application process. Some other things that I'm going to want to look for in this job description as well. First, and really important in terms of just me feeling more confident about applying for this job, is are they going to be providing training? So are they expecting me to walk in the door ready to work on day one, or are they going to be providing me some sort of training process? And can I feel then a little bit more confident that I don't have to know anything or everything, because I'm going to be able to learn while I'm there? And in this job description, they literally say full training will be provided. Sometimes you'll find this next to a section that talks about the experience that's required, or you might also find it in this bottom section, sort of like as an add-on, or sometimes they might even specify it right at the start up here in this initial section, saying that we're going to provide you with all the training and you don't need to have any concerns about that in the first place. So that's a really great thing to kind of look for and make sure that that's what they've said. If they haven't specified that, if you can't find that in that job description, that's another question that I'd want to be asking in the interview process. My next question is, how do I apply? cool. So this job description looks like it's meeting all my criteria. I've checked my checkbox and I can meet all of those skills and experience. It's somewhere close to me and I feel like I can get there. I can work the right hours required. So in that case, how do I apply? And usually that section is going to be right down the bottom, and it might depend on the application. So sometimes with online applications, it'll literally just say apply here and there's a button and you click on it and then you go on to the first phase of the application process. Other times it might ask you to do something that's external to the app that you're working with. So for example, with this job description, we've got please submit your resume and a cover letter detailing your suitability to this email address. So in that case, I don't need to click on any kind of button and apply online. I need to send them over my resume and a cover letter, and they're going to be handling them all themselves internally. That's good. I now know how to apply, and I know that they've asked for 2 specific documents. They've asked for a resume, and they've also asked for a cover letter, and they've told me what they want me to put in my cover letter. So if you were going to apply for this job and you were thinking, don't bother with a cover letter, I wouldn't bother with the application, because they've given you some really clear instructions. And if you can't follow those really clear instructions in applying for the job, they probably won't hire you because they're thinking you're probably not going to be able to follow instructions when you're at work as well. So make sure that you really spend some time and note down the actual application process so that you understand it really well. Same with if they have an online application process and they're wanting you to fill out sections of information, they're wanting you to maybe write responses or upload a video, interview or responses to questions. Make sure you do all of those things and that you really follow that application process to the letter, because if you don't, it might affect your chances of whether or not you get a job, or I would expect it to affect your chances of whether or not you're going to get that job. So that's a really key thing to look for. Talking about how to apply, what's the application deadline? Up here, I can see that we've got an application deadline right down the bottom. Awesome. If you can't see that application deadline, then you probably need to reach out to the organization or apply straight away, because you don't want to miss that deadline, particularly if you've put the effort in to actually read the job description, you think it's right for you, like let's get that sorted. I would normally put that deadline into my calendar, and I would put in reminders a week or 2 weeks before that deadline to prompt me to complete my application if I hadn't already done so that I'm not leaving things to the last minute. Most employers, if they have an application deadline, they're not going to close applications before that deadline, even if they get some great responses from different people. So you don't have to necessarily panic, but I would make sure that I was submitting things by that deadline. If you reach out to them after the deadline and say, I'm sorry, I didn't finish my application, but here, can you please accept it anyway? Unless they're really desperate for staff, they're probably not going to go with you, because you've shown that you can't be punctual even in the application process. So definitely something to think about and to write down in multiple different places, maybe even tell some people who are around you about that deadline as well, just so that you're definitely not going to miss it. Now, the last thing that I would want to look for in a job description, a job like this, is I would want to look for the salary. Now, as you can see, the salary isn't listed in this job description. And that's something that's really common now, particularly with entry-level roles, is that if they mention salary, they will say salary will be discussed in an interview. Some organizations are being very transparent about salary, and that's fantastic to see. I love seeing organizations that are telling you straight up what you're going to be remunerated, because that's information that you need, and it should be part of your decision-making process before you finish the application. But it's important to note that sometimes they will not list that salary. If they don't tell you what the salary is at any point as part of the application process, feel free to ask about it in the interview. If they're cagey about it, there's a chance that the salary isn't good. If their salary was good and they were offering you a good salary, they would probably be sharing that information with you, because it would be an incentive for you to apply. So that would be something that was going through my head. If you are about to start work, you've gone through all this process, they've been offered the job, and you're thinking about the salary, I would check that salary met the award conditions or whatever the minimum salary they were required to pay was, particularly if you were, say, being employed at a smaller organization where they might not have the HR teams employed to check all the time that they're going to be paying their juniors the right salary. Salary is important, and you deserve to be paid appropriately for your work. So that's something to think about. Now, the last thing about reading job descriptions is that job descriptions give us lots and lots of information so that we can write a good, strong application. We can tailor our resume to this particular job. We can tailor our cover letter if we need one. And we can also make sure that we're using those keywords and those things that the employers asked for in the job description during the application process. This is particularly important if you're applying for something where there are going to be lots and lots of applicants, and the employer is probably going to be using some sort of AI screening tool for your resume. Because what will happen is that AI screening tool will read the job description and it will look for the keywords in the job description. And then it will look for the keywords in your resume and it will try and match the two together. So if they have used one particular keyword and you've said that you've done something similar, but you've used different terminology, for example, it might downrank you. If you haven't mentioned something that in the job description is really important, once again, it might downrank you and you might not make it to the next stage. So we're going to look at how we can read this job description and really identify those keywords and the key skills that the employer is going to want to see. So first things first, I'm going to go straight back to the start of the job description and I'm going to be reading this section again. So I can see that community, welcoming, high quality, exceptional customer service is a bit of a theme that's coming through. I would be wanting to make sure that in my resume and in my application, and then if I get to interview in my interview, that I'm talking about quality, that I'm talking about providing good customer experience, and that I'm talking about how important that is to me. And maybe I would be using examples, say, for how I took pride in my schoolwork or how I took pride in something else that I've done that demonstrate that I understand the concept of quality and of providing that kind of quality. Further down, they're talking about they're seeking a dedicated and enthusiastic team member. So if you turn up for your interview and you're not that keen and you've also applied for 10 other jobs and you haven't bothered to tailor your resume for this job, that would be working against you in terms of showing your enthusiasm. So you might want to say in your resume that you are enthusiastic and that you're willing to learn. That's always a great thing to put on any resume anyway, but that would help meet these criteria. You could talk about a passion for food. You could put that in your resume, perhaps put it in your skills section that you have an interest in cooking or an interest in nutrition or something like that. That would help meet that criteria. You could also talk about how, see, this fast-paced environment, that's something that you're going to want to address. So in your resume, for example, you might talk about how you've been part of a sports team and that has been a really busy, fast-paced environment. And I would use those specific words, fast-paced environment, to talk about my experiences in my sport team. The other thing we can talk about is that sometimes they will use words that, for example, like they'll talk about teamwork. Other people will refer to teamwork as collaboration. You're wanting to make sure that you're using the specific term they've used in their job description if you're talking about those things in your resume. And that's going to mean that every time you submit a resume, you probably need to open it up, reread it through and change any words to suit the job description so that you're meeting the same things. So they've talked about here working as part of a team and independently. They haven't used the word collaboration. So I would be wanting to talk about teamwork in my resume instead of collaboration, just so that I'm making it as easy as possible for any kind of screening platform to kind of join the dots and put the two together. So that's a really quick snapshot of how to read an actual job description and understand a job description. One of the things that I would do if I was reading a job description and I was seriously considering applying for it is I would get a notebook or I'd open a new document somewhere and I would jot down some questions that I have at this stage. Now, it might be that as you do some more research or as part of the application process, you're going to come up with the answers for those questions. But if you don't, those are questions that I would be taking with me to the interview. Things like, how many hours can I expect to work after I finish my training? Or how long does the training take? What kind of environment will I be working? Will I be working in small teams or will I be working in larger teams? All those different kinds of questions that we really want to know about jobs before we commit to working in them. You can ask them, jot them all down, and then you can ask them as part of that interview process. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that helps you write your resumes and application documents. And all the best with your job applications.